Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to everyone out there, wherever you might be. Welcome to another episode of the Casual Takes Podcast. I'm Greg Coleman, and the road to the World Series officially starts Saturday, October 4th. Red October. This may be the year that the Phillies finally put it all together and win a championship in the Bryce Harper era. I mean, I've been waiting so long, personally speaking, since 2008. Really, I even have my rally towel right here, from 2008. Y'all see it? Y'all see it? hmm But before I go into my whys and my hows of why I think we have a chance of winning the World Series this year, I do want to give y'all a little background in terms of my fandom as a Phillies fan. But I mean, for starters, I've been to Phillies games since Citizens Bank Park opened in 2004. I was actually at the inaugural game in 2004, so that's a badge of honor that I wear personally. I also say I've been actively a fan since during the 2007 season. I would say probably earlier, if I'm being real. Like even like I said, I've gone back to 2004 and going to games since then. And so I've probably been a fan since even before then. But I would say I've been an active fan since 2007 that I can remember at least. But that run from 2007 up to 2011 was special. Really, it was an introduction to Phillies baseball for what I saw it as. But two, 2007, starting in 2007, the Phillies came all the way back from 7 games. 2008, we ended up winning the World Series. 2009 was when my heart was crushed for the first time when we ended up losing to Yankees in the World Series. Then you have 2010 and 2011, which we lost in both of those postseason appearances, respectively. But 2011 hurt the most, I would say, because seeing Ryan Howard's Achilles tear live, as well as really that dynasty end as well too. It was heartbreaking for me at a very young age. I was around 9 at that time, so it was definitely heartbreaking. It was definitely an introduction to really how painful being a Philly sports fan could be. And then and during the long drought, postseason drought, in which we didn't make the playoffs, I became a fan throughout those years too. It was kind of like the process Sixers, but I was just being able to just go to games quite often during those times, and just seeing a community of other Phillies fans in the building as well too. That no matter how bad the team was, we were still showing up, and so that really is where my fandom as a Phillies fan began. Really, then you enter 2022. Phillies go back to the postseason for the first time in 11 years. We have a date with the Braves in the postseason, and honestly, I'm just glad we got past the wild card. As if people remember from that wild card, we go against the Cardinals, and we come from behind in the ninth inning to eventually come back and win the game altogether, and inevitably winning the series too. But going against the Braves, like I said, I'm just happy that we made the wild card or we got past the wild card, and the team shocks the world, really, and not only beats the Braves, but they then beat the Padres, and then they ended up making it all the way to the World Series. Like I said, from the comeback against the Cardinals, from Reese Hoskins' bat spike to JT's inside the Parker, or as many people like to call it, Bedlam at the Bank. It was truly a magical year altogether. But once again, my heart was shattered as we lost to the Astros. We even got no hit by the Astros in that same series. But that Jordan homer is still stuck in my head. It's still ingrained to my head. But fast forward to 2023. Once again, We meet the Braves in the NLDS, and once again, we send them home. Maybe this was the year that we would finally put it all together as we beat the Braves again. We were following a similar pattern, and we go into the NLCS against the Diamondbacks. We start off hot. We start off with a 2-1 lead in the series, and then everything comes crashing down as we lose in 7 to the Diamondbacks. And really, the biggest question was, when would this team put it all together? Fast forward to 2024, and the Phillies answered that question really, as we had a great season, becoming NL East champs for the first time since 2011. And this time around, we have a date with the Mets. And really, I think everybody expected us to beat the Mets as we had home field advantage. We had the better roster. And there was really no reason why we shouldn't have been in the World Series, or at least been contenders to win the World Series. But we go out in probably the most frustrating way possible. Although the Mets did win in 4 games, it really felt like we got swept because we lost game 1 at home, and then we just barely snuck by and beat the Mets in game 2. Go to game 3 and game 4, and we're getting absolutely embarrassed in New York. And so the biggest question is, you know, not only can they put it all together, but will this team ever take advantage of their championship window? And now we're in 2025, and it's been a great season altogether. And once again, the Phillies find themselves back in the postseason. Once again, getting a bye similar to last year too. Once again, winning the NL East. And really, it starts with pitching. Throughout the course of the season, you had Zach Wheeler in the rotation, Christopher Sanchez, Ranger Suarez, and Jesus Luzardo. Not only did they have the best ERA in the National League, but they had the most quality starts, which is going 6 innings and giving up less than 3 runs in those 6 innings. Also having the most strikeouts within our rotation as well. And really, it's the best attribute to this team is how great our starting pitching has been, and really having, in my opinion, best starting pitching in the league. I mean, it's subjective, obviously, but if you look at the numbers, that could tell you otherwise. Being able to consistently go 6+ innings every game puts the team in a very, very comfortable position, but also just a great position overall to win games. I notably admired how the pitching staff was able to rally around Zach Wheeler's injury, as Zach Wheeler has been the cornerstone for this pitching staff. But unfortunately, we aren't going to be able to see him for the rest of the season, the rest of the postseason, and potentially going into 2026 as well. But that's a whole nother story. I really like how Christopher Sanchez was able to establish himself as the team's ace with Zach Wheeler going down, and even cementing himself into the Cy Young conversation. Whether that will be between him or Paul Skeens, that's up for you to decide. But I think Christopher Sanchez has a good chance at winning the Cy Young. But that's also not to say that Paul Skeens has just been outwardly this year, and he's really a generational talent when it comes to starting pitching in this league. But as I said, starting pitching is going to be a very important piece in the postseason, and really it's the big factor as to why we got here. But I also want to talk about the trade deadline too. First of all, I want to talk about Harrison Bader. One of my favorite walk-up songs in the league. He has No Kid by Drake. Who's calling my phone? Who's calling my phone? Who's calling my phone? But Harrison Bader with a 305 average since joining the Phillies, 824 OPS, and then 16 RBIs to go with that. He's been the exact spark plug that the Phillies needed in the outfield. I remember when we first traded for him, and a lot of fans were saying like that's it, like that's all we could do for the trade deadline. And obviously time will tell, but out of all of the outfield pieces that we could have gotten out of trade deadline, I'd say Harrison Bader has been 110% worth it, especially for the price that we got him at. And so he's going to be he's going to need to be that exact spark plug that we need going into the postseason. But he also has a really good glove in the outfield, and he was also good in the base paths as well too. So that's really why he needs to be that spark plug, not only to get on base, but to be a key contributor to producing some runs as well. And I expect him to bring that same energy in October. I remember his postseason run with the Yankees, and he went absolutely ballistic in that postseason run. Although the Yankees did come up short, and although there wasn't a lot of production within their offense, or really as a team as a whole, Harrison Bader was ultimately that bright spot and that unsung hero, but also just that MVP in that postseason run. And so, if we could get that same type of production out of him going into this postseason run, it's we're gonna get a very good product out of this baseball team. But I also do want to talk about Joran Duran as well too. I mean, from the entrance, from that 103-mile-an-hour fastball to having a nasty knuckle curve as well, he's really been exactly what the Phillies have needed in that bullpen. But also just having a certified closer as well too. As dealing with Jordan Romano for the first half of the season, it wasn't fun. It was not fun. Every time he came in, I was predicting for him to at least give up one home run. And if it wasn't one home run, I was expecting him to give up at least one home run. I mean, one run, give or take. Give or take. And Duran has been exactly what, like I said, he's been exactly what the bullpen has needed. But he's also going to be what you need for this playoff bullpen. I think having a guy as electric as he is, but also having in the time of the year in October especially, that is going to make for really truly scary hours. And so if we're able to see him in the ninth inning, depending on how our pitching looks from the first inning to the eighth, is going to make for just an electric atmosphere at Citizens Bank Park. And so I'm excited for that. I'm excited for how it's going to look in person, as I will be at one of the games. And I've really fallen in love with how electric Joran Duran has been. I know people are going to talk about, some of his shaky appearances, giving up a run or giving up two runs or giving up four straight hits. And that is a little bit of concern, but I also want to say that luck has been a big factor to that as well, as it's not easy to hit 103 miles an hour. It's also not easy to adjust to that and be able to hit a 90-mile-an-hour knuckle curve. And so the biggest factor to Duran really is being able to keep the ball out of play and being able to shut down hitters 1, 2, 3. Like I said, scary hours, and I'm excited to see what he can do in Red October. But I also want to talk about our big three, as I can't not talk about them. First, I want to talk about Kyle Schwarber, leader in RBIs this season, National League home run leader, was very close to getting the Phillies franchise record for home runs in a single season, but he did get the record for home runs against lefties in a season. And I was also able to bear witness to his four homer game. And so he has just been making history over the entire course of the season. And so what is needed from Kyle Schwarber, not only has he been the MVP of the team this year, he might be the league MVP. He might be the National League MVP as well. But what is needed from Kyle Schwarber is to be that same, play that same product of baseball, be the power hitter that he's been this entire season. When he comes up to plate, whether it's a runner on base, whether it's just him at the plate, we can almost guarantee that he's going to go yard. And if he doesn't go yard, he's going to get a hard hit ball into play and put himself on the base paths. And so I just need that same type of production from him this postseason. And really, this is going to be a reoccurring theme, as I also want to bring up Trey Turner into the mix as well. I've been critical of Trey Turner since he signed in 2023. I remember him getting that standing ovation for his struggles back in 2024, and I think that was a little silly. Don't get me wrong, but I think that he proved me a little bit wrong this year, as he hit 302 this year, and he was a very reliable person to get on base, especially with his speed. But he also won the National League batting title, which has just made me more supportive, and I really can't say that much wrong about him. However, going into the postseason fully healthy now, especially dealing with that hamstring injury, I think he'll be at 100% with the rest that he's gotten. But I expect him to play that same product of baseball that he has been this whole season. Being able to, if he is the leadoff hitter, being able to get on base consistently as the number one guy, being able to make plays in the infield as well too. I don't expect him to be a Gold Glove infielder, but being able to limit the amount of errors, being able to keep them in the ball game from the defensive standpoint. I mean, they say all the time in sports that defense wins championships, and baseball isn't exclusive to that. And so I would like to see Trey Turner step up this postseason. But like I said, it's a recurring theme in regards to my big three. And last but not least, I want to talk about Bryce Harper. Although he has been the heart of the team this postseason, he for once wasn't the best player this year. As I said, Kyle Schwarber was the MVP for the Phillies this year. But going into October, not to say anything against Kyle Schwarber or anything against Bryce Harper, but that needs to change. If the Phillies want to win the World Series this year, Bryce Harper needs to be at his best. He needs to be the guy, really. When we went to the World Series in 2022, he was most notably the playoff riser. I can't say the same for everybody else around him, or really when we got no hit as well. But he needs to be the playoff riser if we want to end up winning a World Series since 2008. When he joined the team in 2019, the expectation was that he was going to be he was going to place himself on the mantle of great Philly athletes. And it's time to cement yourself in that position. And so, like I said, a recurring theme with the big three is that they need to be the big three. They need to be the consistent guys that we rely on for this postseason. Yes, I want our role players as well to step up and contribute, but the biggest issue as to why this team hasn't been able to produce at a consistent rate in the postseason is that not only do the bats end up getting cold, but that big three as a whole has been nowhere to be found, and so you can't really call them a big three. But in the postseason window that we are in currently, whether it closes this year or it closes next year, it's time for the guys that we've spent all this money on to earn their money's worth, really, to be a product of why they deserved all that money. And so, like I said, it's going to be they're going to be a recurring theme for the NLDS, the NLCS, and even the World Series if they make were they able to make it up there. But they're going to be a key as to how successful or how low we can go in this postseason run. But without further ado, I want to bring up the NLDS. Phillies versus Dodgers. We're going against the defending world champions from last year, and we're also going against the only other team I could see contending for the World Series. Obviously, you can't predict baseball, and I don't know what is yet to come for the Phillies, but I honestly see this as our hardest obstacle. It's just really a huge shame that with this being the NLDS that and this also really being the first series for the Phillies that the series is only going to go to 5 games. I wish it could have gone to 7 it could have gone to 7 games or it could have been a 7-game series. And really that's to say that this is going to be even more of a great series as you really can't have that much room for error. You really can't in a 7-game series, but in a 5-game series, honestly, if you lose one game, you are digging yourself in a deep, deep hole. And so, really, it starts at game one. But the slate for games 1 to 3 is most likely for game one is going to be Christopher Sanchez versus Shohei Ohtani. Game 2 to 3, you have maybe Ranger Suarez and maybe Jesus Luzardo. Could probably throw Walker Buehler in there as well. And on the Dodgers side, I see maybe Blake Snell and Yoshinobu Yamamoto potentially being in the mix as well. But that is yet that is yet to be predicted. All I know for game one is that Christopher Sanchez will be getting the bump. And personally speaking, not only do I feel good about the rotation, but I feel good about Christopher Sanchez being the game one starter, especially in a 5-game series. I think the Dodgers match up with us evenly in the pitching department, as I just mentioned, Yamamoto and Snell. But my casual take for this game, or for this series really, is it could go all the way to 5 games. But I still have the Phillies on top. In the season series, the Phillies ended up beating the Dodgers 4-2 as we played them 6 times within the season series. And I don't think that LA is ready for just such an anxious, not only the anxious, but an eager crowd. Fans such as myself, we have been waiting so long for the team to finally put it together. We've been waiting since 2008 for them to put it together, but we've been waiting since 2019 when Bryce Harper got here to ultimately for this team to put it together. We've been waiting since 2022 for them to figure it out. And really, the fans are going to be what I would like to say the role of the 10th player. And so I don't know if LA is ready for that. Home field advantage is definitely going to play a huge factor in this series, and I think that's going to pay dividends for how far the Phillies can go. As not only do we have the 2 seed, but if the Brewers were to potentially lose their series, we would lock up home field advantage for the rest of the postseason. And so I feel really good about the NLDS. But if we were to advance past, I feel really good about the NLCS and the World Series. And so that is yet to happen. And so I'm not going to jump the gun with that. But like I said, I want to talk about Phillies and Dodgers. And so the key to the series is for the bats to stay hot, like they have been this whole season. Yes, the pitching has been our strongest point. I'm very, very well aware of that. And we all know that as well. But the biggest problem, like I said, for these past postseason runs is that the bats have gotten cold at the wrong time. And I expect the Dodgers to bring that same intensity on the offensive side as you have guys like Shohei Ohtani, Freddie Freeman, Mookie Betts, Kike Hernandez, and Teoscar Hernandez, and just a whole bunch of studs in that stack. Not only that stacked lineup, but that stacked roster as a whole. They just came off of a series against the Reds in which they just had an offensive onslaught. I mean, it wasn't even close. And this is not to put anything against the Reds either, but the Reds are probably the worst postseason team or worst team to make it to the playoffs in general. And so I don't I'm not going to say I want to take it with a grain of salt, but I'm also not going to look at this offense as they're going to consistently do this throughout the entire postseason. Most notably against the Phillies as well, as our pitching is not only better than the Reds, but our offense is also better than the Reds too. And so I don't expect that to happen this series. I expect their starting pitching to give us a solid 6 innings. And then you have set up guys like Tanner Banks, Orion Kerkering, Matt Strom, being able to come in for the seventh and eighth inning and shut the door down too. That opens the door for Jerron Duran as well. And like I said, I'm just very excited to see what he does in this postseason run, especially at home. Especially at home. But like I said, the pitching can only go so far. You know, I'm talking about them going 6 innings and then Strom set up guys to come in, or even Duran to come in and shut the door down. But none of that happens if our offense doesn't help them out. You play complementary baseball, being able to have the offense come in, get some runs, makes it so much easier for the pitching staff. And really, although our bullpen did have really a rough start in the first half, in the second half they looked a lot better. But really, the biggest key to that is our offense being able to come in, add some complimentary runs, make them more comfortable, and that's really the key to why we won 96 games this year. And so I think timely hitting is going to be a big factor in producing runs as well. Hitting with runners in scoring position, putting the ball in play just in general, just eliminating the strikeouts, or even playing small ball at times is very, very effective in a postseason run. And while I mentioned the big three needing to be a huge part in the team's success, which that still rings true, our role players outside of them need to be a big part as well. Being able to be that protection in their lineup. I remember in 2022 World Series, Harper did his thing, Schwarber did his thing, Castellanos did his thing for the most part. Outside of that, you really didn't get much contribution from guys that were following after them. And the biggest takeaway from that 2022 World Series is that Bryce Harper didn't have any protection really. And so Alec Bohm specifically being able to be a key RBI guy is really his brand of baseball. I'm not going to expect him to hit the ball out of the park, but I do expect him to be able to be a slap hitter, being able to, like I said, be that key RBI guy. If you have one of these key members of the big three on base, being able to come in and generate RBIs is going to pay dividends for the rest of the lineup as well. Our outfield getting hot at the end of the season. Max Kepler, Harrison Bader, and Brandon Marsh, Nick Castellanos. Really, those four outfielders being able to be a key contributor to our offensive success is going to pay dividends for how successful we can be in this postseason run as well, but also for this NLDS run. JT also being a key contributor to both sides of the field, both on offense and on the defensive side, I think is going to play an important factor as well. As if all of these pieces are put together, This team is by far the better team than what people think that the stacked and overpowered Dodgers roster may be. They have looked they have looked beatable this year. They have looked human. We have proven that in the 6 games that we've played them this year. But playoff baseball is a different factor. I do know that. But I think the series will be absolute cinema for sure. For sure. No matter how many games it takes, no matter how many games it takes or who wins, I think it'll be a great test for both teams. No, whoever advances, I think it'll be a great test to them. As like I said, I think the Phillies have a great chance at winning the World Series this year, but the Dodgers also have, I think, the second best chance to win the World Series as well. And so, whoever advances, this is probably going to be the hardest test for sure. And like I said, I can't foresee anything for what's to happen in the rest of the postseason. But what I can say is that on paper, this is probably going to be the marquee matchup. And so here's to a great series against another great team who I have nothing but respect for. And I'll be at the game for game 1 in the NLDS. And so I'll be live reporting everything at the game Saturday on my Instagram story. So be on the lookout for that. And going around the league, you have the Cubs going against the Brewers, and the Brewers look like their fall from grace is going to happen very, very soon. I think that they had the best record. Although did have the best record in the National League, they don't convince me as serious contenders. And like I said, I could be wrong, but I think the Cubs match up better against the Brewers. And so that could potentially be the Phillies' next opponent in the NLCS, but time will tell with that. Going into the American League side, you have the Yankees going against the Blue Jays, and I think the Blue Jays are a better team. Not only did they win their division in the AL East, it was a tough competition, don't get me wrong, but I don't think the Yankees have all of the pieces to put it together this year. With all due respect, and I think this is the Blue Jays' time to come alive in this postseason, and so I expected to prove why they had the best record in the American League this year. But on the other side of things, you have the Tigers and the Mariners. Mariners yet to see whether they can put it together in the postseason, as they have been going many, many years without making the postseason, and they've consistently made the postseason for the past few years. Is this the year that they finally put it together? They go against the Tigers for this series, and although the Tigers did have a major collapse in losing the American League Central title, I think it'll make a great test for them going against the Mariners, and I think that'll be a marquee matchup in the American League side. As honestly speaking, that is a toss up. That is a toss up. That's all I have for today. This weekend in general is going to be extremely, extremely action packed, and I'm excited for it. As not only do you have the NLDS game 1, but the following day you'll be having Eagles and Broncos at the link, and so be on the lookout for everything Eagles from my reaction to that. But be on the lookout for my reactions for everything in the NLCS series as well, as that'll be my next time that you hear from Phillies baseball in general. And so make sure to follow, like, and share on all platforms, all of that. And I'll see y'all next time. Go Phillies.